the same and win their first Copa America. What a man to win it! And Chile is champion!
Welcome to the Chilean Football Show on the Red One TV.
Welcome to episode 5 of the Chilean Football Show on the Red One TV in partnership with Chile Today News. I'm your host and moderator, Tom Sneff. We are a 1-hour show dedicated to Chilean football in English, where we cover La Roja, Primera Division, Chileans abroad, and everything in between. The team today is going to Chile. Daniel Campos.
Hello, Thomas. Hello, everyone.
Good stuff. And in London, we have Alex and Matias. Matias, how's everything?
Doing well. Getting a bit cold here now. How are you?
Excellent. Alex, everything going well with you?
Yeah, as Matias said, just trying to keep warm.
Excellent. We were off for a bit. Couldn't quite get our schedules, to line up. But we could go on about La Roja's disappointing FIFA window. But the past is the past, guys. Even though 20 games have been played in the National League, Primera Division, still 14 fixtures to go. Not much has changed. Católica remain in first place of the league, where Colo-Colo remain in relegation zone. Daniel, you follow the Chilean league quite closely. Since everything's kind of come back after the break, how have you seen the last couple of places? Obviously, a lot of competition for international spots of 2021 Libertadores and Sudamericana.
Indeed. Look, it's been, as you've rightly said, a bit of a crash course, trying to, fulfill the calendar that's been modified due to all the reasons that we, know of this horrid year that's been 2020. But in a nutshell, Chilean football, I guess, at club level has shown, like in previous years, even more so this year, a lot of cracks, and a few clubs, have benefited, showing the good results from long term, i.e. Unión La Calera, Universidad Católica, Antofagasta, Unión Española, especially when Ronald Fuentes took over. And then you've got, those who, sort of like, as we say in Chile, belong to the Otis team, the elevator, suben y bajan, and they're up and down, they're unsettled, they win, they lose, they draw, and then you've got, the teams that just can't get anything right, and we know that Colo-Colo shouldn't be bottom, but they are, and that's a reflection of the crisis as an institution. But I guess, just quickly to answer your first question, the league, I think, is really hot at the top end of the table. If Católica relax, it may go to Unión La Calera, it may go to Unión Española. And that, I guess, is reflected really well in the Copa Sudamericana.
And we will get to the Copa Sudamericana later on, but, 3 clubs taking part in that competition from Chile. But Matias, it hasn't been quite the same with everything that's been happening, as Daniel has said. What has sort of surprised you, I guess, to say the least, from the smaller teams, I guess you could say, from anywhere above the chart from second to fifth place?
I mean, I think it's been quite a nice change, obviously, having, Unión and La Calera up there, 3 points off the top, Española a further 3 points back, having in La Calera a smaller team fighting for the title, and then obviously at the opposite end of the table having Chile's biggest team in Colo-Colo battling for their lives to avoid relegation for the first time. So while the quality of the league might not be high, I mean, it's not been good for a while, at least we have a lot of entertainment at both ends of the league, and obviously to make Colo-Colo's position even worse, the 2 teams above them in 17th and 16th, La Serena and O'Higgins, are now the 2 teams in the best run of form. They're the only 2 teams in the league that have won their last 3 games. So what initially looked like a 3-way battle for relegation has now almost dragged in those teams in the middle of the division, the Palestinos, who looked safe a few weeks ago, but now are almost getting dragged into that relegation battle. So, the last 14 games are going to be, if not high in quality, then high in entertainment.
As Matias and Daniel said, Colo-Colo remain at the bottom of the table. But with Colo-Colo, it just seems like they just can't win. They just can't win. Injuries keep plaguing them. There's been several reports, Alex, that they've been trying to sign players, to cover up for some of those holes on a temporary basis. But are they going to do that?
I had to save the Colo-Colo question for me, eh? I think it's important what Daniel said earlier about how now it's paying off. You see the teams that invested in the long term, which you don't see a lot in particularly South American football. You have something to look forward to. You have Copa Libertadores to look forward to. You sign a few players just on short-term contracts, and you get as far as you can in that tournament. I think Colo-Colo is paying for who they are, essentially. That's coming from a fan. I mean, as much as I love the club and as much as I cheer the club, you can't really ignore where they've gone wrong. And now I think now is the time that they're actually paying for it. And more than ever, the teams that are thriving are the teams that actually invested correctly, and look more than just big name players and big name teams and money. Colo-Colo have had a long history of money and star players and wanting to be the best no matter what it takes. But that's not always the case. And I think now, for the first time ever, as we said, they're battling for their spot in the top division.
Now, I know this keeps coming up as a recurring topic, but the truth is, we just saw it in Peru a couple of days ago. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have 100 titles. Doesn't matter if you have 50 titles. Alianza Lima getting relegated in Peru, and the same can happen for a very, very weak Colo-Colo side. The Chilean league will get a break, Daniel. The games will go into Christmas. Players will get a chance to come back, obviously after the holidays with their family and friends. That's going to be a much, much needed break for Colo-Colo and company, to really reset on a 2021 year, on a completely new year, basically saying goodbye to this horrendous 2020 campaign for them and starting fresh.
Well, going also with what Alex has recounted, Colo-Colo as an institution is a mess. There's a lot of off-field bickering and who said what, and it's just unprofessional. There's a toxic environment, and it's a club that reflects on the grand scheme, especially in Chilean society, or any of the three big clubs. And football is, like a famous philosopher said, football is a reflection, is an anthropologist's dream. It's got a sociology element to it. It'll be a complete disaster if they get relegated. But as you rightly say, there's a break. There's 13 rounds to go. And let's not forget, this weekend is the Clásico Universitario, the oldest in the country. Huge. And there's nothing to lose for La U. Who's to say La U surprises and the tournament gets back, into red hot form? It gets entertaining. Católica lose. I mean, Católica honestly is the strongest side at domestic level. Colo-Colo, like Matias said also, Colo-Colo has to start winning in 13 remaining rounds because O'Higgins and La Serena are on an onward run of form, and they're playing actually decent football now with the changes in staff. So La U obviously are battered now with Walter Montillo highly likely leaving. They're the changes once now that Venezuelan manager Rafael Dudamel arrived. There's plenty. Many are even tipping that Católica have this pretty settled and they're on the way to a tricampeonato. I wouldn't jump the gun too soon.
And speaking of that, December 6th, Universidad Católica and Universidad de Chile will face off each other. Matias, even though there is a 15-point gap between the two, one is in first place, the other in seventh. Can it be as close contested match as some people would hope?
I mean, it's such a cliche, but it's so true. Any derby of that magnitude. I mean, I don't think it's entirely true that, all form goes out of the window, but I do think an element of that is true. Um, you know, this season has been so different with fans not being in the ground, and in these games in particular, fans play such a huge part. And Universidad de Chile, haven't had the best of records, whether that's home or away, because they can't handle that kind of pressure. So whether or not that um, plays into their favour, we'll have to wait and see. But I think at this stage, I do think there is such a disparity, such a difference in quality between the two teams, that despite it being, a derby, I would expect Católica to win. But, if Dudamel has had enough time with these players now to kind of start implementing some kind of change, some kind of philosophy, we'll have to wait and see. But, if I am a betting man, so if you ask me to bet, I would bet on Católica.
Unfortunately, I wish that Nico would be here, Alex, but he unfortunately isn't, because he covers on Universidad de Chile on a day-to-day basis. But Alex, speaking about their coach, it was widely reported that Hernan Caputo would be arriving. He doesn't arrive. They get the Venezuelan coach who coached the national team, and also coached Atlético Mineiro, who Sampaoli took over just recently. Eduardo Vargas joining him there. Is this a gamble?
At this point, I think any gamble could be good. Like Matias said, it's kind of the same as a derby. You gamble, you can either go in your way or you can't. And at this point, I don't think they could have afforded to stay the way they were. There had to be change, and just like any coaching change, it could go in your favor, it cannot go in your favor. The coach can get along with players, or they can't. I think at this point, just like most clubs in the league, and just like the federation itself, is also a change of personnel isn't necessarily a bad thing at this point.
No, it certainly isn't a bad thing at all. And Daniel, after Universidad Católica was embarrassingly eliminated from Copa Libertadores, now they're playing Sudamericana against River Plate of Uruguay, and they skimmed by them 2-1 in the first leg of the final round. You watched the game. How did you see it through? And is Católica really this better than River Plate of Uruguay, or is it that they just have a bad night considering all the names they have, or just the recent form in the league does not transpire internationally?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's very disappointing to see Católica completely dominating the domestic scene, and very well so, and then just struggle in the Libertadores, and it's a third year running under Viñat San Jose, and then last year under Gustavo Quinteros, and who's now obviously Colo Colo, and now under Ariel Holan. But look, the Sudamericana, it sort of like shows the hypocrisy in Chilean society. La Copa Sudamericana es de cartón. It doesn't matter. It's like the Europa League. Who cares? It's piss easy, and it's not. If you're going to compete in it, win it. Or fight the idea of winning it. And La Universidad de Chile, La U did it in 2011. Colo Colo failed in 2006, but that's years ago. But looking at it now, I think Católica have a really good shot to stamp their authority. Let's not forget, Católica as an institution is the best sporting club in the country. Swimming, hockey, rugby, triathlon, football, etc. They need to reflect that at a continental level. If you're playing River Plate of Uruguay, which in Spanish you would say they play in potreros, in cows paddocks, well, that's not to underestimate Uruguayan football. It's a smaller country, it's a form of smaller football nation, but it's a glorious football nation. They're exemplary, and you can't write off River Plate of Montevideo, or any Uruguayan club for that matter. When it comes to international football, the Uruguayans, it's like they're possessed. They're different. from the domestic front into continental football, they're very hard to beat. They may play ugly football, but try and grab 3 points away. So I think Católica, and especially Fernando Sampedri, especially if you're a Católica fan, a Cruzado, and you jump on the Sampedrineta bandwagon, he's in hot form. So I guess there's also off-field issues with the boardroom headlined by former goalkeeper Jose Maria Tati Vuljuvacic, to lock him in, sign him, invest in that, show the mullah, show the dough, buy him because he's been exceptional, a great asset to the squad. And I think honestly, I mean, we would all would like to separate our own allegiances and our colors and just go for football. For the football in the country in general, would like Católica to win at San Carlos and do the job in the return leg.
And the return leg, you have lots has to be said that you have to go game by game, Matias. But if there's one club in Chile, it's Católica right now, who are in the best form compared to everyone. Does Católica stand a chance of winning this tournament, which is as Daniel said, the Europa League of South America?
Oh, it's a difficult question. I mean, I've been probably more critical than anyone here of the level of our domestic league, and everybody here is right in saying that Católica are by far the best team at the moment, but also the best sporting institution in the country. But you have to ask, what is the level of competition that they are the best of? They are the best of a very bad bunch, to put it kindly. So while they might look good while they're playing here, as soon as they go to the continent and play against teams from countries that even slightly higher, have slightly more quality domestically, have slightly more depth in their squads domestically, that's when you can start to see that despite being a good team here, we as a footballing country, as a league, are still a long way behind others on the continent. But to answer your question, because they're such a good team, because they have a knack of winning here, and games over there are just it's a two-legged playoffs. You don't have to be the best team to go through over two-legged playoffs, and I think they're well run, they're well coached. And if you have that, you in a two-legged tie, you always have an opportunity. And I wouldn't necessarily put any team there, as an outstanding favourite. So I think you have to say they have some chance.
And some chance they do have. Alex, the other teams facing in the quarterfinals. Let's say, even theoretically speaking, just to counter Matias's point, Alex, but many other teams. You have Vélez of Argentina, Junior of Colombia. Based in Barranquilla, Independiente, who has done very, very well. So it's definitely not an easy competition by any means, but it does help in their favor that the away leg is at home, is at San Carlos de Apoquindo.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with everything that Matias said. It is true that Católica are the best in Chile, but what does that mean? What does that mean compared to other nations? I could be crowned, the queen of Tier 7, and then go to the FA Cup final and play against, I don't know, Arsenal, and as bad as they are, they're still gonna score like 7 against me. I don't know if that made sense, but it makes sense. Like, you go, especially as Daniel mentioned it as well, Uruguay, they're good at football. It's who they are. They are a small nation, but it is what they're good at. So it will be hard. And then, as you mentioned, all these other teams that are a bit more settled, I think, into playing continental football as well. Universidad Católica, they're recently new to playing against these big teams and playing outside of Chile, and having the same pressure as Colo-Colo, Universidad de Chile would have before. So I would say they're still relatively new to having this amount of pressure. And then, playing in Chile, they're not used to someone else being better than them at this point. They're not used to having to handle pressure of someone putting them on their back foot and having to actually go and play a different game than maybe that they're used to. So maybe it's a thing of comfort. that they're so comfortable with Chilean football, and they're good at what they're doing at the moment, so they don't need to change anything. But then going international football, that changes everything. And I think, as Matias said, we are a few steps behind than the other nations.
Daniel, we were speaking kind of off the record. Unión La Calera, to me at least, has really surprised me as a very ambitious project. Not the biggest budget in the world, but certainly they've made a lot of gains the last couple of years with various. They had one very big win in Brazil, I believe, a couple of years back, and Palestina did quite well. Antofagasta, had a couple of results go their way when they played at the Maracanã. But Unión La Calera, there's such a similar situation to Universidad Católica. Their sporting directors just bringing all the right pieces. Even though Calera is a city, sorry, that compared to Santiago, it's most players would not be able to put it in a map. I'm speaking to the mainly to the Argentines, because not unlike, but just like Unión La Calera, so many of these teams are just so heavily foreign. By foreign, I mean Argentinian. But Unión La Calera are, from what you've seen, they're being constructed very well. They have a chance. They lost the first leg against Junior of Barranquilla. Can they overrule when they go back to home?
Yeah. Well, we did speak off the record of the television series, Presidente, and obviously we know who that was, and he came from. He's a native of La Calera, and La Calera is a provincial city here in La Quinta Región, with a heavy Middle Eastern presence and a community there. So Unión La Calera has historically been that kind of team. Their fierce rivals, San Luis de Quillota, but now they're on a continental stage for the past 3 years, and that's investment from Argentinian. What's the word? I forgot the word right now, but anyway, it's a project that's been ongoing lately. It's gone really well. It's been a gamble, because these kind of ventures, that was a word, ventures, a holding, has backflipped and has backfired in Chilean football for more wrong reasons than good. This is an exception. Unión La Calera was sort of dubbed like the reject team, full of players, decent players, mind you, from bigger clubs, having their contracts terminated, and to play at Católica, they've got decent, players, Andia, Vilches, two Vilches, Seymour, etc., the goalkeeper as well, Wimberg, a number of players. So it's a decent team. It's a competitive team. I think they can do it. Not to mention they reconstructed their stadium. It's a beautiful, nice, small boutique stadium with an artificial pitch. So it ticks all the boxes, to, especially with CONMEBOL, with their criteria to host and stage a game at continental level. It's a club. It's a tiny club, but they tick the right boxes. And I think their long-term plan is going to fruition. And also a little asterisk, beside Unión La Calera, they closed their operations in their women's football, so they can start their own. Just long story short, they would lease the patent of the name to the NFP, so another club based in Santiago would occupy and pay or hire the name of the club to operate in Santiago. So now Unión La Calera is showing that as a Sociedad Anónima Deportiva, as a propriety limited, or as a shareholding company, as a sporting shareholding company, they're now going to open their own operations in the women's game. So I think the future's bright for La Calera. Even though many are skeptical of their operations, they've got third-party ownership and all that, but they're doing the right thing as well. They've got players who are delivering the goods on the field and at boardroom level off the field.
The other thing I also learned, Matias, is if you look at the microcycles that Rueda was having at ANFP in non-FIFA windows, a lot of the players actually came from Unión La Calera, and being a lot of young players too, age 20, 21, 22, 23. So you definitely does see that clubs like Huachipato, Palestino, smaller clubs with smaller setups are doing things right.
Yeah, I mean, La Calera in particular, I mean, like Daniel said, whenever you see sort of a venture like that pop up and take over, I mean, given the history of previous ventures, you're right to be skeptical. But they seem to have gone about everything really well. Like you said, whether it's the scouting system to get young players in, or like Daniel said, the hiring of rejects from the bigger clubs that were deemed not good enough at the top level. They're kind of the antithesis to Colo Colo in many ways at how they're run. You have Colo Colo, who should be at the pinnacle of Chilean football. They should be the model for how clubs are run, given their history as the biggest club in the country. But now you have a small team like Unión La Calera come through, and they've just turned the tables completely, and have proved that you don't need a lot of money to do this. Yes, they've had investment, but nowhere near the amount that obviously the bigger clubs have had. And I guess from a neutral perspective, I mean I would love them to win the league. It would be, I think it would be a great story. And I guess the only comparison you could probably have to an upset would be like Leicester City, maybe in the Premier League. But I think if you compare them to Leicester City, I think that would actually do La Calera a disservice if they were to win it. I think the disparity between them and Leicester in terms of a comparison with the rest of the league is much bigger.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because actually it just popped into my head. If you can imagine what Unión La Calera, could do with Colo Colo's money, and what Colo Colo could do with the directives, with the board that La Calera have, just swapped around. No, La Calera don't have a lot of money, but they're a well-run club. Colo Colo have a lot of money, and they're not a well-run club. They're not well-run. So definitely the complete opposite. Alex, if Unión La Calera do advance in and beat Junior of Colombia, based in Barranquilla, it would really set a precedent, not only for this club but maybe for other clubs. That it only takes a couple players, of Chilean young players playing in that 11, and you never know what clubs abroad, either in Mexico, Argentina, or Brazil, could be watching that match. So that maybe once and for all, we could have a couple players exported and could translate into some national team success.
Yeah, definitely. I think firstly, if Calera do well in the internationally in the continent, I think that would put a bit of pressure on Católica as well to do well. Maybe that's a little push that they need. But overall, bringing in young players, you see it more often. You saw Bielsa with Leeds, a minimal amount of money and a minimal investment. Obviously not minimal. I mean, it was still a fair share, but he got players that nobody's ever heard of before. He got players that fit his style and fit the way he wanted to play, and look how they're doing. It's the same in the women's game. Manchester United women, they got Casey Stoney. It's their third year in existence, and now they're top of the WSL league. Why? That's because Casey Stoney knew what she wanted. She got younger players that nobody knew of again. She formed a team that was adequate to her philosophies and her strengths, and look what she is now. It's the same, as you said, bringing in younger players and just showing them an environment where they can thrive in with the people that actually are looking out for them. I think that's very important in football at the moment, where you see, we're going again to Colo Colo, who should be the model for this, but they're quite the opposite. They're money hungry, and all they wanted was big names, big stars to bring them as much revenue as they can. And that's not how to run a football club, essentially. Football players are, they're big names and they do bring in revenue, essentially. But at the end of the day, they are human. They are people that need a certain environment to be able to psychologically perform at their best, and that's what they're doing. So yeah, Unión La Calera is, they brought in these rejects that perhaps didn't thrive in the big clubs, but they created an environment where they can actually see the potential of each player and play to their strengths.
And just on your point, Thomas, about obviously you're right. Any continental tournament like the Sudamericana is a great shop window for these young players to show themselves to the rest of the continent, or Europe maybe. But I'm so desperate for this core of players to stay together maybe a little while longer, in particular the younger players. I mean, because I think the Chilean national team has suffered because of this. any player that shows any amount of form, young player for any team in Chile, they go so quickly before they've even had a chance to establish themselves in the league here. And then we've seen that be detrimental to their development. And we've got this huge dearth now of talent where we should have the next generation of players coming up after the golden generation, and they just haven't. And a huge reason of that for that is because these players are moving away so young after not already established themselves in our domestic league. So I'd love for this core to stay together, especially the young players, for another season or so, just to find their feet in the domestic league and continental league.
Well,
and
I
also,
guess it will
sorry.
Really... No, sorry. No, I'll just add a bit there. I guess it will depend on if the club has financial problems. If the club does have financial problems, they'll sell because they have a necessity. But if they don't, then they'll keep a competitive team together over the next couple of years. Or maybe what they do is they get a couple 30-year-olds that are in good form, but again, have been rejected by the bigger clubs, as you said, Matias. Daniel, you were saying.
Yeah, also to continue, just to cap off Thomas's question, if you look at migration patterns in football, the number one country for migrant footballers is Portugal from Brazil. So Brazilians, en masse migrate to Portugal to ply their trade. Second in the world is Chile. The doors are open for third and fourth and fifth rate Argentinians, because the good ones go to Italy and Spain. So the Chilean football for well over 10 years, 2 decades, have been infested with a whole load of mediocre Argentinians just because they've got Argentinian passport, and you've got the exceptional ones, the really good ones. And that's where they need to decide whether they should stay at Chilean football. For example, Joaquin Larribey, Fernando Sampedri, Walter Montillo. There are some notable exceptions. But the majority, even like Curicó Unido, which is another good example of a club that still is a football club, not a shareholding company. They've signed some decent Argentinians, and La Calera is a good example. So it's sort of like, probably most of you would agree, and viewers, it's like the Moneyball theory going into practice in football. And also, you got to think that La Calera has this, probably, let's hope not. Let's hope this is not a once in a lifetime opportunity for the club. Let's hope that their long-term projection is well into fruition. Yeah. So great question, Thomas.
The other thing that really came to mind is not just Unión La Calera, but Coquimbo Unido. How have they gotten where they are? Matias, I know it's the rival of La Serena, but how have they been able to get to where they are? What's been their trajectory? Matias, you're muted.
I mean, sorry. Slow and steady. I mean, really, they're not, like, I guess similar to a similar extent like La Calera, but they don't have the same ceiling, the same potential as they do, but also run really well. They spent a long time in the second division. There was no sort of, obviously everybody tries to get out of that division, but there was sort of no rush to do that. And they've built similarly a really good core of players, and they are, I guess now their season is suffering domestically because of those continental commitments in the Sudamericana, and they've done brilliantly on the continent. I mean, I thought they would fall well below the standards of that competition, but they've surprised me. But I think unlike La Calera, they don't have the squad and they don't quite have the quality to be able to cope with the demands of playing in Chile and on the continent. And I think you can see, I think they're now they're one of those clubs, sort of along with Palestino, that have now been dragged towards the bottom of the table. I don't necessarily think they're in danger of relegation yet. But it certainly goes to show that it's not easy as a smaller club to juggle those domestic and continental commitments.
The biggest issue of the Chilean national team has been, to find a new number 9. But, Daniel, lots can be said about this. It's really hard to find a number 9 when you look at the Chilean league goal scoring table, and the first 15 guys, it's all foreigner. So how are you going to find a number 9, and not just a number 9, a young number 9? if your top 10 of those top 10, 8 of them are foreigner. And when I say foreigner, excuse me, Argentinian.
Yeah, great question. I think, Thomas, that's a question for everyone on the show. And mind you, like personally, and even in my coaching days, I'm kind of the guy that analyzes more defensive, tactics. But if I'm a coach, if I'm in opposition, which I have worked as a scout as well, when I used to do some scout work, what would I look in a number 9? First of all, physical presence. Second of all, positioning, tactical, positioning and presence. Thirdly, technique. First touch, finishing. You need a fox in the box. You need a poacher. There's different types. The Chilean number 9 is not typically, your tall, like, I don't know, let's say in England, like an old Matt Letizia or an Alan Shearer, or even in Chile, let's say domestically, maybe beats me, like Marcelo Salas before he migrated to Argentina. A
Suazo,
poacher.
to an extent.
Or Suazo, brilliant, by the way, scored his 101st goal for La Serena. Amazing, a legend of the game, which, I guess Chileans should praise their legends in life, as a fine example of what's happened this week in Argentina with Diego. You have to celebrate players, in life. But anyway, I think we've had amazing strikers, but if you look at their profiles, they're not the kind of forwards, with a brilliant exception of Salas and Zamorano. They don't have that aerial presence or the physique. Mauricio Pinilla. But then you look at, or even in the 90s, like Mauricio Iesca or Juan Carreño. But now if you look today, there was Reinaldo Rueda looked at Pino. I forgot his name, Stefan Pino, and the guy's just disappeared, went to Deportes Melipilla, and he's roaming around the Primera V. 1.90 m, looks like a basketball player. He can fend off defenders, he can guard the ball, shield the ball very well. Ignacio Geraldino did really well, goes back to Matias's point, did really well at Audax. Was even rumored to go to Feyenoord in the Netherlands and has gone to Mexico. Who else? Felipe Mora at the MLS. I don't think domestically. No, I don't think there's an answer to your question. It's a pending question. It's an open question for everyone, and it's a question that needs to be, addressed urgently. Yeah.
Honestly, I would like to see ANFB have more strict rules. Everybody talks about the U21 rules. To give younger players a certain amount of minutes. But with all due respect, you can start a player for 7 games, and then with that rule, you pretty much completed your task, and then the player just rots in the bench, or gets loaned out to even smaller clubs. And this isn't just the top 3. This is just even smaller clubs. Like you'll see, like Palestino, they'll be playing like 33, 34, 35-year-old forwards, and you have a 26-year-old, even a 24-year-old in the bench that can help you, but they want to win, and they think that by winning is older players. The other thing also is friendship. People don't like to admit this, but at the end of the day, everybody knows each other. At the end, sometimes, Nicolas made a great point a couple episodes back. Chile is the league that has the oldest in all of South America, and you just can't have that. You pretty much nurture talent, and you have one guy and doesn't really develop properly. But guys, moving on to a bigger segment, I guess. After the FIFA break, Sanchez scored 2 goals for Inter Milan. Vidal has been getting back in form as well, playing in both games, in Torino and Sassuolo. And what bigger stage than against Real Madrid in the Champions League? Unfortunately, lost that 2-0, but is quite the stage, Alex, isn't it? To see these two guys do quite well. Not only in Serie A but the Champions League, and for them maybe extend their European careers longer than maybe some expect.
Potentially, yeah. Alexis Sanchez has been in top form. You see sparks of what he used to be, which is quite nice to see. I think I forgot in which game it was the other day. He assisted Lukaku with just a simple cross into the box. but he doesn't have those sparks of brilliance anymore. He can't take on 2-3 players, get to the end of the touchline, and then cross in a low hard cross just for someone to get to the end of. We don't see him doing that in the national team particularly. So to see him actually getting back in form and looking like he's actually enjoying playing football again, that's huge. Personally, as an Alexis Sanchez fan, but also for the national team, maybe we are depending on them a little bit too much and getting happy when they're back in form, because that's only a good thing for us. But then Arturo Vidal, I think personally, he's been in top form since he started playing with Barcelona. I think going to Barcelona changed him for the better in terms of the way he played, but is also his attitude off the pitch. I think he became such a better player overall. He knew his role at Barcelona and he did it well. It's the same with Inter. Inter is a bit obviously not as strict as Barcelona probably off the pitch, but on the pitch you can tell he's thriving. He's one of those players that's he's old. He knows what he's good at. He knows what he's not good at, and he just sticks to what he knows, and it's paying off.
After the international FIFA window in November, Lautaro Martinez sat out, obviously to quarantine, and Antonio Conte made the decision to start Sanchez and Matias. Boy, did it pay off.
Yeah, I mean, like Alex said, it's really nice. I mean, he didn't have a great window with Chile, I think, to put it kindly. I think obviously Vidal was the standout player for Chile in both of those games. So to kind of see flashes, like Alex said, of what he used to be is very promising. But I mean, we've seen flashes. Obviously, the last good sustained period of form he had was at Arsenal. And we've seen flashes since he's been at United and on loan at Inter and now moved permanently to Inter. But the question is now, can he sustain those flashes for longer periods of time and, resemble something of the player that he did while he was at Arsenal? And Vidal as well, domestically in Italy, has carried over his good form from the international break. But I mean, the guy's in his 30s now. You'd have thought he'd learn to, control his temper. And 2 yellow cards in the space of 30 seconds for arguing with the referee against Real Madrid in the Champions League cost his team potentially the win. I mean, we all know he's had a temper for his whole career, but it's like, is he ever going to learn at this stage in his career? I think it seems unlikely. And obviously in the Champions League, Real Madrid has been his bogey team. He got sent off playing there for Bayern Munich as well. So it's one of those, you weigh it up. He's been good domestically, but then it was a bit of a shambles again in the Champions League. But if he comes back to the national team showing anything like the form that he did last time he was here, I think we would all take that.
Daniel, Arturo Vidal has been solidifying himself into the Inter midfield. Considering the competition that he has to him, can he really convince Conte to really give him a shot for the longer period? Obviously, Conte, a big fan of Arturo Vidal. Having a pre-existing relationship from his years at Juventus. Vidal just keeps on getting stronger and stronger. Playing with Christian Eriksen and Perisic. To me, at least, it seems like. Obviously Vidal playing in the Bundesliga with Bayern and, in La Liga with Barcelona. To me, it seems like Vidal just loves playing in Italy.
Yeah, it's sort of an extension to Matias and Alex, where we're analyzing Vidal over these years. I mean, the guy made the jump, remember, from Colo-Colo straight to Bayer Leverkusen. He didn't do any football in South America. That's how good I used to say the kid, but the guy is, and he's not a kid anymore, but he sometimes does play like a kid, doesn't he? And that's what Conte needs to really nail him down. As you're pointing out, it's not the first time they're working together. And allegiances aside, passports aside, Vidal is the best midfielder in that team. Given the roles and the functions, the guy can defend, he can hold, he can distribute, he can shoot from long range, he can, he displays attacking, characteristics. Mind you, I quite enjoy Christian Eriksen. I have watched him play as well, but Vidal can really take hold of that midfield at Inter, and he probably, I think, to manage a player like him, you need to be smart psychologically, and I think Conte has already worked with him. Given that the fact that they've worked together at Juventus, I think the staff need to. You can't blame Inter or Internazionale with the staff being really livid and furious and disappointed with Vidal's antics. Especially it could be harsh. It wasn't a red card against Real Madrid, but he needs to settle that because Vidal has the personality. He's, as we say in Chilean, Spanish and Chilean slang, el choro. He's got that wit. He's got that street smart, and he's cunning. And get out of my way. Back then in Juventus, a penalty for Pirlo or Tevez, and Vidal would like, stuff you, get out of my way. I'll get the ball. I'm taking this penalty. I run the bloody thing. And that character and personality has made Vidal what he is. I think so. I think Vidal, pardon the pun. I'm not going to say he's like wine because he gets better with age, but it's probably true. Let's just hope he's disciplined. He maintains discipline off the field. He's a superb player. He's a fantastic player.
Excellent. Guys, to our fourth and final segment of today's episode. We have 15 minutes remaining, so we're going to try and analyze and talk about this as much as possible. The Chilean women's national team is back. Last time played in March, before the pandemic happened. Everybody had to lock themselves up in their houses. A long time has happened, but ANFP booked 2 friendlies against Zambia. The reason why, in March they are playing against Cameroon in a playoff qualifier to qualify for the Olympics Games. Only 2 go directly. Brazil already went directly after they won the Copa America Femenina. Alex, why don't you bring us up to speed and tell us what's happening with La Roja Femenina and what really will happen here after they prepare for these 2 games, but what can also happen in February and March when they play those 2 crucial games.
As you mentioned, this is Olympic qualifying. So Brazil qualified directly to the World Cup and for the Olympics after winning Copa America. Us, as we came out runners-up, we qualified for the World Cup, but we qualified for playoffs in Olympic qualification, as the tournament serves for qualification for both World Cup and Olympics, which isn't seen in the men's game. You kind of have 2 different tournaments. So ANFP, I think they did really well in getting these 2 friendlies against Zambia. Zambia beat Cameroon, which is who we're playing for qualification. Then I think they're trying to get another game against another African country as well. So it is really good practice for Chile, and obviously they lost. What was it, 2 days ago? They lost, and I really hope that kind of was a hit in the face for them to realize that if they want to qualify for Olympics, they need to step up their game, because that wasn't a particularly good game to watch.
That's right. And Daniel, they lose to Zambia, as Alex said, by a scoreline of 2-1. They play a rematch coming up in 2 more days' time. The second game also taking place in Santiago, happening at Estadio Nacional. The previous game happening at Poquindo, San Carlos de Poquindo, excuse me. And this Chilean women's team, is there a reason as to why maybe they haven't played since March?
Yeah, well, let's extend also Alex's response, because it shows a lot of almost like a third world kind of treatment to the women's game in South America with CONMEBOL. It's not possible. It's actually, to be honest, unprofessional to have one Copa America to decide 2 tournaments. I mean, and that's not, you hear a rain of excuses, this and that, but it's just the unwillingness and the unprofessionalism. It's just CONMEBOL not willing to do their work and expand and actually do the job correctly and professionalize the game and every respective national federation. ANFP, well, that's a topic, a whole different topic altogether. You know, ANFP should split from the federation, as FIFA statutes imply. So on Saturday, San Carlos de Apoquindo, Pablo Milad, the president, said that it was a lot of hard work, especially with health authorities, to get Zambia over to Sao Paulo, you know, get the team and the players reunited. A lot of them playing Europe. Mind you, Barbara Banda, you know, had a spell. She plays in China, had a spell in, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, and she played in Spain. You know, decent players. It's a reason why they qualified to Tokyo and knocked out Cameroon. I think, you know, the reason why obviously they didn't play in March was since March was the pandemic, but they played an interesting tournament in Antalya in Turkey. I hold that country very close, very dear. And, you know, they beat Kenya. They played decent, you know, important, I guess. Look, regardless of the score, you know, I sort of crucify people when they like to compare the men and the women's game. You don't compare it. It's you know, it's parallel. It's just separate. But you need matches. You need to get you know, the ball rolling and mileage on the clock. And that, I think, Chile has done really well since March, given everything that's happened, to play in Antalya, and they won the tournament, the Turkey Cup. So the inactivity from March and on the domestic front as well hasn't helped. But mind you, there's been 5 rounds played in the ANFP women's, and some matches postponed, you know, and there you've seen, you know, a lot of the Chilean players come back to Chile to play with their clubs, Cala Guerrero, for example, etc., etc. Paloma Lopez, and La U has really strengthened their squad. And then you've got Palestino, Colo-Colo, and Santiago Morning, to be honest. So Alex, you know, you may, or Matias as well, it's probably a 5th or a 6th, an outsider, maybe Audax Italiano, in the national front. So these 2 games against Zambia are very important. And as Alex indicated, if that performance on Saturday is repeated tomorrow, Tuesday, or, well, at the time of recording at the Nacional against Zambia, we should be worried, because February is just around the corner against Cameroon, and Cameroon are no easy opponents either.
Matias, you actually went to the Women's World Cup in France. As Alex was saying, they're playing against Zambia again. Strategic move, you know, to really get used to the playing style, as opposed to if they just decided to go, I guess, the easy route and call up Peru or call Mexico or an European side, or do some sort of tour, but even though with the restrictions happening on travel. Do you think this can pay off by them playing Zambia, a team that actually beat Cameroon, as was previously mentioned?
Yeah, I think that is important. I think obviously the quality of the opposition to prepare you for the qualifier is the most important thing. And I think the game against Zambia in the first game, the result was bad, the performance was really bad. But I don't think, you know, you can be too surprised by that, considering, like Alex and Daniel said, these players they don't play. I mean, like you said, the Copa America in 2018 qualified them for both of these tournaments, and we took so long. We kind of now at a stage where all the good work of the last 2 or 3 years was at risk of kind of coming undone. The pandemic kind of, you know, before, you know, during the World Cup, it seemed like the ANFP were taking women's football seriously, but then the pandemic kind of again highlighted the difference in basically the different way that the ANFP hold the men's game and the women's game. And, you know, going forward, if these 2 games don't work out, if they play badly again on Tuesday, I mean, who's to say that, you know, with the qualifiers at the start early next year, how are they going to improve between now and then is the concern. But obviously, you would hope that, like you said, the women's league here, the vast majority of that national team play here domestically, and they've only had 5 rounds of fixtures here. So you'd hope potentially by that time, given they had more match practice, a lot of them would have been playing together more. That would also benefit them when they go and play for the national team.
And again, as Daniel said, there is no proper tournament to really prepare them, you know, for this Olympic qualifier. So really, they're just banking on club form. Obviously, players, playing regularly with their clubs, both at home in Chile and abroad. And really, this game, this next game and the last game against Zambia, unless they book friendlies in January, a month or a month and a half before this two-leg affair against Cameroon. Alex, to finish off with you, last question before we wrap up this fifth episode. Excuse me. What does the Chilean women's national team need in order to beat Cameroon and make history?
I think they need to be a bit more aggressive. I don't know if you saw the highlights or if any of you watched the match, but we had chances. We got to the net. We got good crosses. Just decision making was just horrendous, to be honest. Where we could have probably taken an extra touch or two. They tried to go for a first touch spawn and it just went completely off frame. I think we need to be more aggressive. We have good players. Pancha Mardones, she's the best player I've ever played with. It's a joy to watch her play. And I can say she's here, and then probably everyone else is really, really down. I have so much respect for her. To have her in the midfield, it's just absolutely amazing. Daniela Zamorana, is it Zamorana? Zamora. Yeah. I thought she played really well. Obviously, she assisted the only goal that we got. And again, it was Pancha Mardones in the middle to Zamora, and then she got the cross in. I think she played really well, but she does seem a bit young. She does seem a bit inexperienced, to say, for these international games. And, you can't blame the players so much for that either, because as we mentioned, they don't play internationally. It wasn't for a few years that they never played outside of South America. So going to these World Cups, they're not used to playing against European teams. They're not used to playing against any teams outside of South America. So you can blame the players so much, but at the same time, they have lacked a lot of years of experience with international football. And, you start to see it when they miss chances like this. If you're playing against Germany, you can't miss chances right in front of the net. You just can't. And I don't think they're used to that. They're not used to having that aggressiveness that they need to have playing against bigger teams than them, which is most teams. So I think they just need to be more aggressive and realize where they stand and, get their head in the right place. And they're well capable players. We have an amazing team, by name and individual players, and the way they play domestically. They all play well. They all play for big teams. So I think it's just about getting their head right and realizing that they can do this and just actually doing it instead of going out there feeling like underdogs.
Now, are Chile favorites against Cameroon, or is that not fair to the Cameroonians, Alex?
I would say it's not fair to Cameroon. They do really well at World Cups just because of their style of play. Just like the men's team, they are fast, they are physical, and it is hard for a lot of teams to keep up with them. That's quite literally. So it's a different, African football is a very different style of play than what we're used to. And like I said, Chile don't have enough experience to be able to be adaptable to these kind of different kind of style plays that they're not used to playing against. Cameroon, they're used to playing against European teams more often than we are. So I would say in this point, I think we are going in as underdogs.
Excellent. Thanks so much for your insight. To everyone watching us, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. For myself, Matias, Daniel, and Alex, have a good night. Enjoy, and we'll see you again next time.